Hello and welcome to the Womb Centered Healing Podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar and I have Elaine with me here. Thank you, Elaine, for joining us on the podcast. We recently did a live broadcast interview on Facebook. You responded to my call out for who wants to go live with me. And we were talking about fertility and the effects of our emotions on fertility, pregnancy, and birth. And we decided that we wanted to do a podcast interview to be able to explore these concepts, these ideas, these feelings more in depth. And you particularly expressed an interest in talking about, you wrote me a little note about grief and pregnancy loss and how that can influence for subsequent fertility. And I would like to hear your insights on that. And I might have some of my own because it's so forbidden even and taboo to even explore grief fully and the healing power of the grieving process. And that we don't have socially sanctioned grieving processes. We're just supposed to buck up and move on, right? And that's just not realistic, especially with something as profoundly impactful as the loss of a pregnancy. And there are a few other things that you mentioned, but one in particular was communication with the spirit of the baby, whether pre-conception, during pregnancy, possibly even the spirit of the baby that was lost might be an important part of the grieving process. And so I can't wait to hear what you have to share about that. So please, Elaine, introduce yourself a bit more, share about your work, and let's just launch into those topics.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you again for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am Elaine, and I combine holistic kinesiology. I'm a kinesiologist and a shamanic practitioner and medical intuitive. So I combine all of those together to help create a true holistic approach to healing fertility issues. And I really love helping women that have had a pregnancy loss before, because that is really near and dear to my heart, because back in 2010, I experienced my own pregnancy loss. And that's actually what kind of changed the trajectory of my path and led me on my path of self-healing and my path to becoming a kinesiologist and a shamanic practitioner, and to where I am today, helping other women heal their grief as well. And so just like you mentioned, I feel like you were right on. So often women experience a pregnancy loss, but don't talk about it. And I feel like part of the problem with that, or part of the reason that happens, is because so many women don't share that they're pregnant in like the first trimester, right? Because they are worried about a loss. And so then what happens when they do have a loss? Well, then they end up suffering in silence because they never told anybody they were pregnant. So then how can they share their grief? Because they never talked about any of that from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what happened to me. Mm-hmm. I only told a few people that I was pregnant, and I was at the end of my first trimester, and I thought, yes, this is it. I made it past the first trimester. I'm free and clear. And then started having some spotting and thought, no, I'm sure it's fine. You know, I was right at the 12 weeks. No, thinking it was fine. And then I go into the doctor, and then that is when I got the terrible news that there was no heartbeat. And I was devastated. But because I hadn't really told anybody, I really did suffer in silence. And so that is a big part of the work that I do, is helping women to I encourage women to announce their pregnancy right away, because it is a baby, it is a life, no matter what. and to not hide their grief, because it is a huge grieving process. You just lost a baby, you know, that you lost a life. And I feel like so often we just don't communicate that in a way to promote healing. And so what I find in my practice is that, particularly with women that have had loss, the grief really gets impacted in the uterus and the lining of the uterus. And so we have to do some energy work and emotional clearing to look at it and to be able to release that out, to help encourage, you know, successful implantation in the future.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Wow. So, you know, this topic, this specific grief of the loss of a child to a baby to miscarriage, it could be expanded to also include the grief after an abortion, or even the grief after, of course, after a more prolonged pregnancy, even up until stillbirth. But this aspect that you're speaking to, which is that many women, that there are many miscarriages that happen in that first trimester. And in fact, some birth workers, midwives and fertility doctors and things like that, encourage women not to say anything, not to share with their community that they're pregnant until they get past that home free mark of into the second trimester, supposedly home free, right? In order to somehow minimize the pain of then having to say, actually, no, I had a. So there's this whole cultural norm of, if you don't talk about it, it'll be easier. But what we're hearing you say is that that's not the case. That what happens when you don't talk about it, you might be able to numb yourself from feeling the feelings, but what happens with those feelings is they get stored in the womb itself and causes this impaction and impedes the healthy development and cycles of the womb's creative process. And so then it takes a minute to say, okay, how can we unimpact that? How can we allow that flow to happen once again? Which, if we're going to experience the flow of joy and creativity, we have to allow the experience of grief, sadness, other feelings, because that's all part of that flow of creativity, right? And so I'd love to hear more about how you found your way to recognizing the importance of your grieving process and allowing your grieving process, you know, how, and then I imagine you might have discovered this in your, if you were seeking to get pregnant again afterwards, that you might have discovered how if you halted your or pushed your grief under the rug, right? If you tried to sweep it under the rug, that impaired your fertility. I wonder if you had that personal experience, or if you've just noticed this with your subsequent clients when you try to assist them with this process.
I noticed it mostly with my subsequent clients. And for me, my path, when it came blatantly clear, was when I was in kinesiology school, because I had stuffed all of those emotions inside and didn't want to talk about them. And when I was in kinesiology school, we learned about the emotional root cause of physical ailments. And when we were studying that, that is when everything came to the surface. Everything that I had stuffed about my loss came to the surface, to be looked at, to be acknowledged, to be freed, basically. And so I did that. And that was when I made it part of my mission to help other women heal from this grief. And so when I finished kinesiology school, that was what I did. I set out to do, and my practice back then was focused around helping women heal their grief and look at their grief.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I realized releasing that helps women to get pregnant, because the side effect of my work was that my clients were getting pregnant quickly and easily. And I was like, wow, what a correlation. And also along that time is when I was still on my journey of self-healing. And that's when I began to study the traditional Peruvian shamanism and working on, my own healing, and opened up more so that I can be of service in a greater way. And then that is when I was also able to find, like, my mediumship skills opened up and make my connection with the spirit of the baby that I lost. And he's the one who helped, I feel like he's the one who helped orchestrate all of this for me, and that the purpose of him not coming forward and incarnating was so that I could do this work in this lifetime.
Uh-huh. Wow. And that purposefulness, when we find it around whatever traumatic or difficult, painful experience we have, is quite a healing balm. And no one can tell us before we find that for ourselves and have it be healing. If somebody were to come to say to you before you realize that on your own, with your own experience, with the spirit of your baby, that there was a purpose for why, you would have been like, don't tell me that. That's totally futile. When we're in that part of the grieving process, you can't hear that there's a purpose, right? And so I just want to clarify that, because that is a valid place to be in your grieving process, that it feels purposeless, it feels hopeless, it feels all those things far from purposeful. And we can be aware that at a certain point in the healing journey, we might discover that there was an intrinsic purposefulness because it produced a beauty that might not have been available otherwise. And so, but we don't have to go through terrible traumas or loss to produce that beauty, but we can receive that beauty when we do go through terrible loss or trauma. And so, and that makes it, that's the healing, like that's the cherry on top of the healing cake, right? And so I want to go back to, well, it's not really going back. Can you share where in that journey, was it in kinesiology school or sometime thereafter, that you made the connection between this emotional impaction that you talked about of not feeling your feelings and stuffing them down, and the actual lining of the womb, and how that was connected? Were you working with the womb specifically in kinesiology school, or some other physiology around there, or how? And if not, where did that connection come in for you?
Sure. So it started showing up right after kinesiology school. Like I said, I focused on helping women heal their grief. And back then, I was doing, that was as I was just starting my training in the shamanic work. So I was focused mostly on emotional work. And so I did a lot of EFT back then, and the emotion code, and gosh, I can't remember all the other modalities that I used back then. So that was when it started. But as I continued on my journey of studying the shamanism, and my intuitive sight began opening up, what I noticed is I was then able to see where the energy was blocked. And that's when I was able to see, with almost every single client, I was drawn to the womb space. And that's where I would see that the energy was blocked, and spirit would just show me that that is the area that we need to work on. And so that's how all of that started coming up. You know, every client is very different, but there are also a lot of similarities that come up when you're looking at somebody from, you know, going beyond what you can see in the human body. When you're looking at it from an energetic level, there are a lot of similarities in that whole womb space that started showing up for me. And so that's when I was like, okay, I understand. And that's when the information was coming in from spirit that this is the area for me to look at. And also working there in that the sacral chakra, but not just the sacral chakra, right? Because there's more than that. It's also connected to the heart chakra and the root chakra. So for me in my work, all the chakras are important, but those are the three that I primarily work with, in addition to whatever I see where the energy is blocked. And so just following what in each body, what spirit is showing me where I need to work, that's where I work.
And have you noticed in your clients and possibly in yourself, changes in your menstrual cycle or how you relate to your menstrual cycle as you're working with these energies of releasing the grief? And do you guide women on how to align or optimally relate with their menstrual cycle through the grieving process, through the healing process?
Yeah, I do. I talk about how, you know, every month it's an opportunity for release and to allow flow and rebirth. And we are lucky enough that we have this opportunity every month. And so I do coach my clients to be aware of what it looks like, how it's flowing, if it's real, if there are a lot of clots. And then with the kinesiology, I use that to muscle test the body, also to figure out what their body might need in supplement-wise or herb-wise, or maybe it's an essential oil, maybe, you know, it's just something else, a tea that they need to drink. And so being able to help bring their body into balance, but a lot of it is their own awareness of their own body and how their body works, and helping women to really connect to that womb space, because so often we are so disconnected from our own power and from our own body in general. Like, so many women just don't take the time just to place their hands over their womb space and just say, thank you. Thank you. And as you do that, and this is, again, something else I encourage my clients to do, is to connect, say thank you, and really feel that energy. And the womb will provide messages for you about what you need, as long as you are open to hear and be open to receive the messages.
Yeah. Boy, I appreciate you. I want to thank you for that message, to remember to say thank you to the womb, because, you know, I'm communicating with my womb all the time and in this dynamic relationship, and it's easy to forget, like with another person, a partner, a child, you know, a friend. It's easy to forget when we're in the midst of even a very loving partnership and collaboration and creativity and all this energy flowing, to stop and say thank you to our womb space for all that the womb gives is so profound. You know, I just felt a whole like relaxation level in my body, just imagining, oh, well, I could do that right now while she's talking, right? And receive that message right here. See, side benefit of being an interview hostess. And just, oh, and I just felt this whole relaxation and an even broader smile in all of my cells, and greater happiness and of being appreciated, right? I mean, so often we feel unappreciated by the world. We feel, you know, that's part of the grief, you know, no one understands me, no one, you know, these are some of the feelings myself personally, but I know that these are very common in a world that doesn't appreciate women for that doesn't leave space for women to have all of these feelings. And that can be a very common additional feeling on top of the grief of losing a child or any of that, is like, oh, the despair of, and what if we give that to ourselves? That appreciation, that recognition of the part of us, the womb, that we're asking this great miracle of having a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And I talk about how the womb is very wise, especially in some of the healing processes that I do, where we ask the womb to hold an energetic space for a healing process, healing trauma, healing, past things that happened in the past, more than just around fertility, pregnancy, and birth, but all kinds of traumas we can hold in the womb. And so I talk about the wisdom of this womb container that's based on the biology of our wombs in the gestation process, which only allows in things that are healthy for the baby and keeps out things that are not healthy for the baby, and vice versa, and removes, things that might, like the wastes of the baby and things like that, and has this healthy membrane, and also takes into account all of the circumstances of the life that we're living. So whether that's your sole purpose of being able to serve women, and so your womb and your baby were in collaboration to give you this experience so that you could help women heal in this way, right? The wisdom of the womb, gave you that difficult yet beautiful gift. And that's the same with any other circumstances that, a lot of early miscarriages might be because there's a wisdom to the timing, to the preparation, the readiness of the mother, to, something not quite being right with the baby or with the mother's health, or, some emotional state that the mother needs to finish working through before she's ready, or, all kinds of reasons that we might not even be consciously aware of, that the womb has a greater wisdom about oftentimes. And so it seems like that might be a big healing step for women who are grieving the loss of a child, to actually thank the womb for its wisdom, and women who are trying to conceive, especially after a loss like that, to actually thank the womb and have an attitude of gratitude towards the womb, as opposed to, why haven't you given me what I want? So I imagine you might work with women on recalibrating some of those emotional patterns.
Yes, and we also look at other factors. So other factors can be like, women have been on birth control for so many years and they're telling their body no, and all of a sudden they're off the pill or off their birth control, and they expect to get pregnant quickly, and their body, their womb, their ovaries are like, hold on, like what just happened? And so that is a big part of my work, is helping women to connect, not only connect with the wisdom of their womb, but connect with every single part of their body, of their reproductive system, connecting with their ovaries and their eggs, and talking and just giving love to the fallopian tubes, every aspect of the reproductive system, and loving it. Because as they love that, then the part of blame and guilt of my body doesn't work right, their own shame of I can't do what every woman is supposed to be able to do, the frustration of getting their period again and not being pregnant again, right? Because all of that energy again gets kind of like just pressed in or pressed in. So as we start shifting that and just bringing in more love, more gratitude, more of that beautiful healing energy, that area starts to expand. And then the woman's own heart starts to expand with self-love. And as we come into this space of loving ourselves and loving our body, that is the start and the spark for creation to really happen.
Sure. I mean, if we look at how we're designed to conceive, right? We're designed to conceive in a moment of passionate, pleasureful, orgasmic lovemaking. We're not designed to conceive, although some people manage to mysteriously conceive when we're in a state of complaining and contraction and pain around it not happening fast enough, right? That it's not conducive to orgasm, it's not conducive to lovemaking, it's not conducive to conception, pregnancy, gestation, carrying to term, any of that. So, and it's actually now, you know, I don't know if you've read Christiane Northrup's books about women's health, but she really focuses on the, there's a particular gas that's released within our blood vessels called nitric oxide when we are in states of heightened pleasure. And this gas, the more of it we have circulating in our body, it's only produced when we do that. We can't get it any other way. It's only produced when we are in pleasure, right? At orgasm, at the moment of conception, when the sperm goes inside the egg, there's this burst of nitric oxide in that egg and in that sperm, and that opens everything up and helps all of the next things to happen, right? When we have a near-death experience, there's bursts of nitric oxide in our body. That whole experience of going into the light, meeting our loved ones again, the bliss that people talk about when they come back from that near-death experience. That's what that nitric oxide burst is all about. Women who have orgasmic birth is meant to be this pleasureful, you know, we talk about oxytocin, but there's nitric oxide happening too in all of our blood vessels. It's producing this gas that makes all of our organs work properly and well and in vibrancy. And so I love hearing you talk about how this heart opening, this experience of self-love, of deliberately choosing to flood all of our organs, our reproductive organs, our whole being with love and gratitude, that, you know, switching from some of the other feelings. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel those feelings. I imagine you really have to help people to have a balanced approach to that, because, you know, saying, oh, I need to just be pleasureful all the time and love my, you know, part of self-love often means holding space for that grief, for that sadness, and loving ourselves through it, not sweeping it under the rug, stuffing it down, and trying to move on to the happiness, right? My experience is, and I would love to hear your experience on this too, the more I try to diminish my pain, my suffering, my sorrow, my anger, any other feeling like that, the negative emotions, the more my positive and pleasureful emotions are also diminished. Those become limited. It's not what we've taught, that if you just think positive and avoid anger, avoid sadness, shorten that, then you can just keep growing with your head. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't seem to work like that. And so I imagine that there needs to be quite a balance in your focus of bringing love to those parts that feel that way and allowing those feelings to come up.
Exactly. And that is a big part of my work, is looking at those emotions, because that's the thing, just like stuffing and not looking at them, we have to acknowledge all the parts of us, which include our anger and our frustration and our rage. Honestly, so many women have like rage just pushed down, and that we can once we look at that and feel it, we don't have to be afraid of those emotions, because there can be an aspect of like divine rage that is just coming out, allowing these emotions to come out to be free, you know? And so, especially when women have experienced a loss, there is a lot of negative emotions to look at. And that I find that when we do it in a safe space, it really does help to promote the healing. And when we look at all the aspects, and women can feel safe to speak what they haven't been able to speak before to anybody else because of all of the shame around a loss, or the shame of their body not working properly. That just creates so much freedom, and then there's also the aspect of self-forgiveness that is a big part, a big key of this work also, is allowing women the space to just have the opportunity to think that it's, and to know that it's possible to forgive yourself for whatever thought or emotion or experience that they've had, right? Just being able to say, you are forgiven, makes a huge impact for these women that have maybe just created this barrier in their mind that there's no hope, no space. And I find that the love and the forgiveness helps create space. And as we create that space, then there's flow, right? And that flow is part of what helps all of the body to work the way that it's meant to work.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to make sure that we touch on this other aspect that you mentioned of communicating with the spirit of your baby that you lost, and how you help women to connect with that, whether it's the baby that they're hoping to conceive and connecting with that aspect of the baby's spirit before conception or after conception, during pregnancy, or after a loss. How do you guide women to communicate with that spirit of the baby?
Yeah, so it's one of my favorite things to do, because I find that it really is healing in itself, because I feel like the spirit babies, when they come forward, regardless of if it was the spirit that left from a loss or if it's the spirit coming forward, their frequency, their vibration really is very, very healing. And as we connect, so preconception communication is a big part of my work, helping women connect with the spirit of their baby that wants to come forward, and just creating the space for them to be able to have that connection, to be open to receive information directly from that spirit baby, just creates this beautiful environment. And I just want to share a quick story that I had a client earlier this week, and we were doing the connection, and it was really cool. This spirit baby showed up as a male, and it was as if he was like almost like a conductor. And so he was just directing me and telling me what needed to be worked on, what part of the past lives needed to be looked at. He was also directing different frequencies of healing energy to come through for the mom. And all this while the mom was in the space of just feeling the vibration of the baby, this spirit. Because sometimes the baby doesn't have any specific messages for the mom. Most times they do, but not all the time. Sometimes it's just about letting the mom feel the vibration, feel the frequency, feel that unique vibration of that spirit, so that they can come together and create a soul connection. So the mom knows what it feels like to be connected to him or her, and she can continue connecting while she's on her path to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Right. So you just lay the foundation of what does it feel like to really connect to this other being, this other spirit that you're entering in this beautiful partnership and collaboration with, right? You're opening your womb, your body to assist this being in its embodiment journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually offering to eat and digest food and water and to provide nourishment for that spirit to build its body within your womb. I mean, it's this very intimate, miraculous relationship, right? And we just expect it to just happen with no communication. I mean, thinking of it in those terms, it's like, well, of course, you might want to meet this spirit a few times before you make this agreement, right? And before you you might want to have a few dates first, right? Just like you would with a mate, with a marriage partner, or the father for the child. You might want to meet them a few times and get to know them and like that, and develop a mutually beneficial agreement, arrangement, understanding, and relationship, building that intimacy with the kind of small human steps that we often need to make. And that baby, that spirit of that baby might, like it sounds like you're experiencing, might have things to assist the mother to prepare for that partnership. Healing processes, messages. So that sounds like a wonderful service. Have there ever been like really practical messages that the spirit of a baby gives? Like, you just need to eat more greens, or, stop drinking coffee, or, things like that. Uh-oh. Okay.
So yes, I have received very specific information from the spirit babies that want to come forward. And sometimes it's kind of funny. And sometimes, as a medium, sometimes I'm just like, ooh, I don't know, but I trust the information that comes forward, right? So I remember one time the baby was like, she needs to clean the house. And so I'm like, the baby's saying you need to clean the house. And she got real quiet and she said, oh, well, yeah, I am a little bit of a hoarder. And I said, well, the baby's saying there's no space for him. And so she's like, he's absolutely right. There is no space. And so that was fun. And then another one was I had been getting images of like a remodel and dust and like chaos. And so I asked the lady if she was remodeling, and she says, well, we have plans to start to remodel. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to cause conflict for him. Like, that's stressing this spirit out. Like, wait until that's complete. And then she was like, okay. So she hadn't told me any of that. And so that was what the baby brought forward.
Interesting.
Other times it's really fun because I get specific, the baby will tell me specific supplements that the mom needs, or like, you need to eat more healthy, you need to cut out the sugar. They're pretty specific about what they want coming forward. And so, it's fun to bring those messages to the mom, because like I said, sometimes I'm just not exactly sure what's going to come forward, but I trust the information.
Mm-hmm.
And then one last thing I want to share about the value of creating this connection is that once the mom, I teach the mom how to connect with the baby, because I'm not with them all of the time. And so it's really important for them to create their own connection. And as they do that, throughout the entire pregnancy, my clients are able to connect with their baby the entire time. And then even after birth, these mothers are able to connect with these infants and understand their infants' needs before the infant can even communicate verbally. And so it makes those early years, like the first year is really challenging of being a new mom. And so this really helps my clients as new moms to have specific info to help their baby and their infant before there's verbal communication. And
Oh, that
so,
just makes so
yeah,
much
so
sense. Yeah.
they don't even need to teach their baby sign language because they can connect at a soul level and communicate at that soul level and have that going forward in well their whole life, you know.
It seems like it has to do with doing whatever emotional clearing that they needed to be able to have a clear space for clear listening, right? Because just like with any communication process, if I'm so, bogged down with my own stuffed down emotions that are sneaking out and seeping into my thoughts and my feelings and my communication without me knowing it, then I'm not going to have a real clear connection with anyone. But if I clear that out and give space for that for myself, then I can show up more present and really be able to feel what someone else is feeling genuinely and get clear messages from another spirit, another being, because I'm not bogged down. I'm allowing it to flow, and I don't have unconscious feelings of my own that are getting in the way and interacting and influencing what I'm hearing from someone else. And so it feels like these two aspects that we've discussed, this emotional hygiene, if you will, of attending to our own emotions in a healthy way, and then this clear connection and the communication with the baby go hand in hand, that you really need to do the emotional hygiene in order to have that clear connection with the baby, and that is a powerful foundation to start that mother-baby relationship on, just like any relationship, right? Any partnership, it's going to need to have a strong foundation of both partners having that clarity. And that baby's going to learn that clarity from the mother if she has those practices already established. Whereas if she doesn't, she still manages to get pregnant, doesn't connect with the baby's going to learn her same patterns of stuffing the emotions, not tending to them. This is how you deal with emotions. You stuff them down, you sweep them under the rug, they seep out and hurt other people. Okay, that's just how you do, right? That's how we perpetuate those unhealthy patterns throughout the generations, right? So this work is really breaking that cycle of perpetual emotional pain that happens in our families. So I just celebrate this work with you, and thank you so much for sharing about it and about your journey and how you found your way to this. It's such a gift, and I want to invite listeners, if they're resonating with what you're sharing about and they want to explore possibly getting in touch with you, how can they reach you? Do you have a website or a way to get in touch with you?
Yes, I do have a website, and it's www.healingthewomb.com. And you can also find me on Facebook. It's Elaine Lopez-Bogard on Facebook, and I have a Facebook business page. I believe that one is only Elaine Bogard, and it says Modern Day Medicine Woman, so you can find me there.
Okay, beautiful. And so thank you so much. And also, if you're interested in learning more about the Womb-Centered Healing Temple, which is the organization that's producing this podcast, you can go to wombcenteredhealing.com. Very similar website names we have. And right now I'm excited to say that when you go there, you'll be prompted to sign up for the upcoming Embodied Shakti Summit, which is an online summit coming up in April of 2019. And so you can sign up there to participate in that summit, where we'll have a collection of speakers along these same lines, talking about all different topics around womb-centered healing and embodiment of the Shakti feminine essence of our spirit. So thank you once again, Elaine, for joining us here. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And we'll just hold a vision for all women, that we can rest into this gratitude for the miracle of our womb and our feminine power of creation. And that whether you're trying to conceive a baby or conceiving of a creative project in the world, that these practices can help anyone, whether you're in any creative endeavor. So holding that for all of us. All right.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you, and thank everyone. And that's all for now.